This is a pretty quick tutorial. I'm going to introduce you to blueprints. Now, this is a really basic approach to blueprint. There's way more you could do with it. This is just a simple use for it for artists, right? It's similar to grouping objects, or what used to be known as prefabs in earlier versions of Unreal. I have a weapon rack, and I have some items that I would like to be attached to the weapon rack as if they were arranged there naturally. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to copy the name of this mesh, and I'm going to right click and say blueprint class, and I just want to make an actor, and then I'm going to type in BP underscore, so I'm going to add the prefix BP underscore for blueprint so I can search all my blueprints later. And I'm going to paste in the name, and I'm just going to remove my initials from it, and then maybe I'll just add like underscore A at the end in case I want to have more than one arrangement. All right, let's double click, we'll open that up. So here's my blueprint. What I'm going to do next is I'm going to select my weapon rack, and up here under add components, I'm going to click on that green button, and then if I look, there's all these different things I can add, and I want to select the static mesh option, which because I have the weapon rack selected, that is already flagged in there. So I click on it, that adds my weapon rack to the blueprint centered in the world. It sets it as movable. I want to change that to static because I want my weapon rack to be static in here. All right, from here, I'm going to start adding additional objects. And so why don't I select my Gladius, and I'm going to click Add Component. And then you can see the Gladius is right there. And now my Gladius is in place. And so I can come in here and I can arrange it so that it's sitting. If I hit F, or if I right click to make this active and hit F, it'll zoom in on my Gladius. There we go. And I can notice I've turned off my snaps inside the blueprint editor to make this easier to work with. You can see it's kind of, the little nubs I gave it are a little short, so I may go back into Max and pull those out after I've kind of set this up and arranged it. I'm going to switch to left. It's going to be a lot easier to arrange how this sits in here if I'm doing it inside these orthographic views. And I can just right click and say duplicate, and now there's another one in here. Oops, let's move that over. And we got to make sure that each one of these, we got to make sure that we're flagging them all as static in here, because we don't want them to be movable dynamic actors. And there's always that good old rule of three, so let's get one more. Oops. There we go. Move that one over. So now we'll have three of them in here. They're all static. It remembers what you had previously flagged them as. And so I can change it from left to perspective. There we go. Since the texturing is all the same, maybe we'll real quick turn on our angle snap and grab one of them and just rotate it 100, oops. Rotate 180 degrees to get some slight variation there. Yeah, I'll definitely need to go into 3ds Max and grab the little support nubs and pull them out further so it doesn't look like they're just floating there magically. I could even go so far as to select my shield, and I'm going to go up and actually select the weapon rack so that everything sits as a child actor directly underneath that weapon rack. I'll just add my shield, and let's go into move. Oops, and we'll move this thing around. Move it over here. Turn off that angle snap. Just give it a cool little angle or something. And then this thing will look like it is magically just attached. Remember, flag it as static. But there we go. So if anybody really scrutinizes it, they'll say, well, how is that shield on there? But hopefully we won't get to that point. All right, at any rate, I'm going to hit compile, and then I'm going to hit save, and then I'm going to close this. So now I have this blueprint actor, right? And I could just drag this in and release. And now I can take this and I can put it anywhere I want inside my scene. And if I wanted to make a variant, I could right click, say duplicate, and I'm going to change this one to my B variant. And now I could, for example, go in, duplicate that shield, and I could move it over here and just kind of arrange, rearrange how it's positioned. Maybe we'll go back to perspective because I am losing the thread on how this is arranged inside my scene. There we go. I was rotating it backwards. Right. And then you can remember, you could switch between world controls and local controls when you're dealing with actors. I believe it defaults to local inside of here. So just be prepared and aware that that is the case. So I'm hitting the space bar to toggle between the different settings here. All right, there we go. Maybe this one I'll just go a lot more traditional with its positioning. Kind of a subtle little turn. I'm just going to pull it out just a little. All right, there we go. There's some, this one looks absolutely ridiculous. I just hit delete on my keyboard to get rid of it. And so we'll just duplicate this and move this one over and kind of rotate and position. And I'm sorry that this has devolved into you watching me subtly rotate my shields. But that's essentially it. All right, you'll probably spend more time going through and trying to be clever in how you rotate and position the objects that you place on here. It's a good idea to change up everything that you have, right? You really don't want to have any kind of repeats for any of the stuff that you're doing. So, kind of move them around. Leave them all in the same spot. Maybe this one needs to come down here. And again, I'm going to go and change up where these sit, or the pegs. I'm going to make them longer, and then I'll probably come back and revise this. Compile, save. So here's the fun thing. If I drag this and bring this in, right? Anywhere that you have placed them, if you make any change to the original prefab, then they will all get updated. So for example, if I wanted to take this prefab and add my banner to it, you see automatically it's been added to every instance of this thing. Now has this banner in there as well, right? So that's something you could keep in mind as you're working. That you could potentially add any changes or updates will happen to every element inside of your prefab. There we go. So now I've really overdone it. And if you're like, you know what, I don't really like that, I think that looks kind of lame, you could go in and just select that banner, delete it, compile it, save it. If you were to go back and rework your mesh so that, say for example, the little controllers were updated, all you would do is just go update your software, re-import it, and then you can open up your blueprints and the mesh will update. Because all this is doing is we're adding static mesh components, and the static mesh components are looking at the specific references, right? So if I wanted to come in here and change this, right? If I wanted a different actor inside of here, right? I could, for example, I could duplicate this, and then I have more than one, and I could replace one with another actor. Like for example, that's another way I could get a shield in. So now I have a additional shield in here. All right. This is my version B. This is my version A, this is version A, and this is just a generic weapon rack I placed there. So that's why I'm getting different results for checking and updating them in. Well, that's it. That's the basics of working with a blueprint and setting those up so that you can have these little artistic arrangements inside of your scenes in 3ds Max.